It might not be the first thing you think about in the morning when you wake up, but I think every one of you out there wants to make the world a better place. And there are a lot of different ways to go about doing this. For some people, it's about creating economic opportunities through business. For others, it's about feeding the hungry. For still others, it's about protecting places that you deem sacred. For some, it's about writing and storytelling. This is Amiri Baraka, famous civil rights poet, playwright. I want to play you a few of his words.
I don't understand why you write if you're not trying to effect some change in the real world, unless you think everything is cool, in which case, we're on the other side of that. Like I said, you got to choose sides. That's what it is. You always got to choose sides. So what is the revolutionary? Revolutionary is always trying to do the most, trying to speak directly to the situation, and to get people to understand that. So it's a hard gig because you find yourself always on the other side of what public wisdom seems to be.
I'm not an activist. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a business person. I'm a journalist. And I have devoted my career to empowering other people to share their stories and to holding those with power accountable. That's how I demonstrate my passion for change. I get to meet a lot of really interesting people in my job. This is me interviewing Sarah Morley. She's a scientist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. She was studying invertebrates and how they are recovering after the dams have been removed on the Elwha River after 100 years. So watching how all these massive amounts of muck and sediment are coming down from above these dams and changing the entire ecosystem. I love taking stories like hers, her passion for what she's doing, and sharing it with as many people as possible. This is the Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell. We went snowshoeing at Mount Rainier National Park. And I was asking her about how we manage our natural resources in this country. That's what the Department of Interior is mainly charged with. One of those resources being coal. We'll get to that in a minute. And every once in a while, you meet someone in your life, whether you're a journalist or whatever else you do, who gives you pause, who sticks with you, whose story doesn't leave, and you find yourself telling that story to others in your life. Maybe when you get home from work, maybe when you get home from school, you just have to share it. Jay Julius's story has stuck with me. Jay is a council member with the Lummi tribe, and the Lummi tribe's lands are in the far northwestern corner of Washington state. They're a fishing people. They've lived in this land for thousands of years. Human remains have been removed from Cherry Point, the place that is sacred to Jay Julius, where his tribal lands are, that were dated back more than 3,000 years. The Lummi tribal fishery is worth about $15 million every year. And that way of life could change substantially. Here's how. We have a lot of coal in this country, and we're using less of it every year. That has coal companies trying to figure out ways to get the coal, which is found mainly in the Powder River Basin of Wyoming and Montana, to Asia. That's where people want to buy it. That's where the demand is. And as you can see, the trains that would carry that coal to these 3 proposed coal export terminals would travel through our state of Washington and Oregon. The largest potential coal export terminal in North America could be built at Cherry Point. It's called the Gateway Pacific Terminal. And yes, Cherry Point is the place I was just telling you about that is a sacred place for Jay Julius and the Lummi tribe, among other Salish peoples. If these terminals are built, we will double our total coal export capacity. The country's coal export capacity will almost double if all 3 terminals are built. Coal is the single largest contributor, source of greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 emissions. So the climate change that is going to affect all of our lives later on in this century and now, as we're seeing already, and is already affecting the fishery that Jay Julius relies upon, this will contribute to it. So EarthFix, the group I work with, the project I devote my days to, is committed to covering stories from around the region about the coal export issue, among many other environmental issues like the dam removal on the Elwha. We did a project called Voices of Coal, and we took perspectives on both sides of the coal export issue, those who believe that these proposed terminals will create jobs and economic opportunities and support much-needed infrastructure for the state, and those who are worried about the environmental impacts, the effects on quality of life, and the effects on First Nations, people that live here, like Jay Julius. I want to play you his story.
My name is Slayalton, which comes from right here where we stand. My second name is Watatlam, which comes from the islands. My Christian name is Jeremiah Julius, or J. Julius is what I go by. I'm a member of the Lummi Nation, and I'm a council member of the Lummi Nation. We are standing at Cherry Point, which is the proposed site for the largest coal port in North America. It is, to us, a 3,500-year-old village of the Lummi Nation people. 75 yards into the water is a documented reef net site where, going back 3,500 years, we harvested in the traditional reef netting way, which is unique to us. We invented it. The dock is proposed to go right over the top of it. Fishing is our culture. To us, culture is fish. So it could be and will be very detrimental if coal goes through the coal port. Because you're talking 465 supersized tankers that aren't even allowed to come through here now. When you have that kind of traffic out here going up to Alaska from here to China, this would completely be eliminated. No more fishing. The impacts that we're going to feel here for our children's children, for 25 years of jobs, it's all about money. And I believe this is one nation under God, but I think it's, if things like this continue to go through, it's not. It's one nation under money, and it's really tragic.
There is power in a story well told. The next thing I want to talk about is accountability and the coal companies that want to build this terminal. It's called the Gateway Pacific Terminal at Cherry Point. I'd spent a lot of time with Jay Julius covering the coal export issue for the past 3 years now. And he'd mentioned, I was always up there on a deadline asking him stories about coal dust, about fishing impacts, about tribal fisheries, that sort of thing. And he'd mentioned some destruction that had happened at his sacred site. And I sort of brushed it off on a deadline, gotta go, thanks, great story. But it stuck with me. It was niggling in the back of my mind. I needed to dig deeper on this one. Pacific International Terminals, the company that wants to build the Gateway Pacific Terminal, bulldozed more than 4 miles of roads at Cherry Point, cleared more than 9 acres of wetlands, and drilled 37 boreholes between 15 and 130 feet deep around Jay Julius's sacred place, around a place that is sacred to tribes in the Salish Sea. They did not obtain the permits to do this work, to clear those wetlands, and they did not notify the tribe. As I mentioned, there are human remains that have been removed from that site, exactly where a borehole was drilled, that are more than 3,000 years old. And I visited the archives where those remains are kept. The tribe was offered $94,500 for their damages. The coal companies, Pacific International Terminals, said it was an accident. I have seen corporate documents from Pacific International Terminals that shows that they knew exactly where the archaeological site 45WH1, as it's called, is, several years before they drilled those boreholes and cleared those wetlands and bulldozed those roads. the permitting process continues. Our governmental agencies, our state agencies are in the process now of deciding whether or not this terminal is going to get built. The Lummi did not accept this money, but that hasn't stopped the project from moving forward in the permitting process. I view my job as sharing stories. I am not an activist, I am not a lawyer, I am not a business person. I am here to share the stories that I encounter and the passionate renditions of those stories from the people I meet with people like you today. I think at the end of the day, it's about meaning. It's about coming home from work or school and being able to say, what I did today mattered. What I chose to spend my time on today, my precious time doing, was important. And that could be anything. That could be giving up your seat on the bus to somebody who needs it more than you. It could be feeding the hungry. It could be creating economic opportunities for other people. But ask yourself that every day when you come home. What was important today? And if you can't answer the question quickly, think about what you're doing. I want to leave you with a quote that stuck with me. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Thank you.